harmony, a new way of looking at our world. The Prince is calling us, asking us to think about the world in which we find ourselves in a completely different way, a way which is as old as human history, and yet somehow there's been some sort of amnesia. We've forgotten that everything is connected, and these deep fundamental laws, mathematical, geometric, cosmic, operate at all levels in all things and inform everything that happens in the universe.
Harmony's words, like lover and lover, through music and meaning, are calling to one another. There is an underlying geometry at work, a constantly moving pattern of life that is proportioned and remarkably balanced. And it was my attempt to set out how we might approach the way we do things by looking at how nature herself operates.
The definition of harmony is the combination of simultaneously sounded musical notes to produce a pleasing effect. From that comes the idea of the state of being in agreement or concord, the quality of forming a pleasing and consistent whole. Those are the holistic definitions of harmony. The art of agriculture lies in working with the grain of nature, not against it. That's always been the fundamental challenge. As a farmer, you have to use your wits, first to observe and then to follow the processes of nature as they reveal themselves to you on your particular plot of land.
So I cut high, but I'll leave a couple of strips, because what we find is that we've got bumblebees throughout this. And I don't want to just knock the whole lot out at the same time, so I want to leave something for those guys. Let it drop down, and we've just watched our earthworm populations just bloom.
If you can buy grain at a price which is less than the cost of doing it here, why not just specialise in milking more cows, la la la. And my answer to that is I'm not sort of ideologically opposed to only grassland farms, but I sort of feel that if we are going to feed grain to the cows, it ought to be grown here. This is a terroir thing, you know, it's about everything. It's about what Gardiner said in 1924, you know, the farm as an ecosystem, the animals become adapted to the place. And I like the idea of them eating the food of the place and me eating that food of the place as well.
So it's not about a system, it's not about a mechanical box where things are happening in. It's really considered from our side the farm as a living organism as a whole.
As soon as you start talking about a farm as an ecosystem, you start viewing the animals on that farm very differently. No longer do I have domestic species, and likewise no longer do I have pests and weeds and vermin. All I have is species across the way. And if you understand what an ecosystem does, the more diverse the ecosystem is, the more healthy the ecosystem is.
Everything in this universe belongs to a single family. Everything is part of a single living entity, closely interconnected. As long as we can let go of selfishness and greed, and use the right means to communicate with each other, and also to treat everything with a sincerity and loving heart, then we can coexist with all things harmoniously.
Harmony is an active but balanced state applicable to the natural world and human society. So we know that when a community works well, it's because it's harmonious. The relationships work and it's a cohesive, joined up system.
It's all about direct sales, and it's all about trying, with a good example, with my dirty hands selling directly to the person who's going to be eating that food and having provenance all the way through. And that's what we're interested in doing. We're interested, if anything, in bringing our sales closer to the farm rather than further away. We just think that there's a lot of room for small-scale farming.
The food alone for this conference has been, I think, an expression of what we're trying to do, because the story behind everything you're going to eat here is about local sourcing, is about stories of the producers, and where possible we've invited the producers to come and be here with their food as part of the reconnection that needs to go on.
So I've got in my kitchen a bunch of unbelievably amazing chefs. I went to see a performance of Terry Riley's In C, and it reminded me of that. This is a piece that's based on C. The thing about it is it's this one single note that sustains the whole piece, but the orchestra itself, all the different players, improvise on this one theme. And I see that as the harmony theme for the kitchen.
It is possible to feed humanity a healthy diet within the planetary boundaries. But, and it's a big but, radical changes will be needed.
And one thing we do know is that line cannot go vertical because it's based on a supply of finite resources, exactly as the Prince said. And you can define that, if you like, as a linear economy, an economy that takes some material out of the ground, makes something out of it, and then ultimately the majority of that product gets thrown away. Is there a way we could shift that line so that line becomes circular?
That's the parallel we try to draw in harmony between the way we look at the natural world and the extent to which it's declining, because we see it as something that can be endlessly abused and liquidated to meet short-term human needs, and yet not being able to see the longer-term consequences.
My great hope is that your conference might strengthen the common understanding of why this approach has to change. Why we have to find ways of bringing about a widespread transition to farming, where farms become more balanced and harmonious entities within nature, within their communities, and certainly within the capacity of the planet.